You don't know how sweet I am. You don't know how sweet I am. You don't know how sweet I am. What I am, and I am sweet. You don't know how sweet I am.
Yo, check this. I might not be what you want me to be, so you might not see what you want to see. But if you got a minute, listen to what I gotta say, cause it's a brand new year and it's a brand new day. See, there's a gap between my culture and the life that I lead, so some will call me an apple, and some a bad seed. They have no idea how my heart will bleed. Their words and attitudes are things I just don't need.
You don't know how sweet I am. I am what I am, and I am sweet.
You see, I'm proud of who I am, and I'm proud of where I'm from. Those ones spreading racism, they're just fucking dumb. Now if you're looking at my life, and you say I've assimilated, to simplify things, just a little more complicated. See, I'm a modern day native, with a modern day life. I have modern day problems, and modern day strife. Now I hear other natives, they talk about the past, and will I do the same? Fuck that. See, I've got no time to dwell on what's already done. I've got too many things that I want to do. And they don't include knives, and they don't include guns. I'm talking about knowledge and sharing it too. See, my people need to learn how to cohabitate, get rid of the anger, and get rid of the hate. We gotta stop for a minute and learn to educate. And you'll see in the end, we all have to communicate. I know there'll be a time to make a stand and a time to fight, but if you do that, make sure the cause is right. Because if the cause is right and the cause is just, greater numbers of people will be backing you up. History has repeatedly shown to us all that united we stand and divided we fall. They were talking about natives and natives alone, because this is a big world and this world is our home. Now I've seen some beautiful people and ugly ones too, and there's no single color that comes into view. So the message I'm sending, it's not all that long. It's just, I want the human race to be stronger than strong. I said I just want the human race to be stronger than strong.
You all have to be strong.
Done it. Word.
We all have to be strong. Peace.
Tugali swagwag. Gela hindi niyo get swagi sliwagi ni wakitaloda onita ag ngwe wenege ani bojo danze okinapi how yoko yukodonos. And for those of you who are new here, I always introduce myself with my original language. So I said Tsugali Swagwag means hello everyone. Gela Hindi Neogets. So Gela Hindi is my name, and it translates to clouds passing over. And I'm a member of the people of the Standing Stone First Nations here on Turtle Island and the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, the Delaware, and Huron nations, and an area that we call the Dish with One Spoon Covenant Treaty Territory. So today, just going to kind of do a couple. It's not going to really be very organized. It's going to be a bit of a test of things, if you will. But there's a couple of things I did want to go over while we're at this here. One of the things that we often talk about on this channel are, well, first of all, let me put this in, um, just so you're aware. Some subjects, if you haven't been here before, you should know that some of the subjects that we cover here during our education and awareness streams can be a bit dark, can be heavy, and can be a bit triggering. So if ever you feel triggered, particularly if you're an Indigenous person, understand that there's always resources that you can access. And if you type in command help, that'll give you a list of some options for you. But of course, there are more than that. That I just, I just don't have a list of all of the resources that we can possibly put in there. But those are some of the primary ones that we can use. And so always feel free to hit that command help if you ever want to just review those contacts and need a place to uh, talk or vent or just kind of get some things out. So what I want to first of all start with is some of you may have remembered I had a hip hop artist on my stream some time ago uh, that goes by the name of Plex. His in real life name is Doug Bedard. He is originally from the Edmonton area and is now living in Toronto. And back in May, he announced that his brother had gone missing. And his brother name was Barry. He went missing in May, and about June, July, the police um, labeled him as no longer as a missing person, but a search and recovery mission. In which case, they did some further investigation and have determined that he in fact was killed in a house in Edmonton, although his remains have not been recovered yet. So there is a search for his remains, but um, but he is no longer with us, as based on the evidence that the police were able to ascertain. The other thing is there's a woman in Thunder Bay, an Indigenous woman who called the police on a domestic violence situation. That woman, I will actually, let me do this. This is part of what I'm going to be trying to test is how these work. Um, okay, so this is actually a camera I haven't used on stream before, so this is be interesting to see how this looks in the end at the VOD after. But I'm actually using my an old iPhone that I had hanging around for this camera angle. But anyway, getting to what I wanted to show you is a real short news clip just based on what they're saying here. So let me open this up.
The 21-year-old Ostberg was found lifeless. The 21-year-old Ostberg was found lifeless in a home after it took 3 calls to 911 before Thunder Bay police responded. In that statement, the family fears their daughter is the latest victim of inadequate and unjust policing services received by First Nation women in Thunder Bay. Ontario's Special Investigations Unit is now investigating. The family is asking for privacy as they grieve their loss and await the results of a coroner's report.
So this is a common scenario that we are seeing in the on Turtle Island when it comes to Indigenous people in general, not just Indigenous women, but Indigenous men as well. And people of color, the media has determined, is used get very little media coverage as far as when they go missing or how people respond to them. And I'm going to play another clip here that came out about 2 years ago, just to kind of cover what they call missing white woman syndrome. And this will be a little explanation as to what that actually means.
Well, 22-year-old Gabby Petito's death has now ignited new interest in finding other missing persons. Her disappearance has actually mobilized people online hunting for clues to focus on other unsolved cases, including those of minorities that don't necessarily garner as much national attention. TJ Holmes has more for us.
Her story has dominated news headlines and mobilized a legion of social media users. Hashtag Find Gabby Petito gaining over 700 million views on TikTok.
I'm hoping this can help someone identify him.
Many of them now internet sleuths, exchanging theories as well as sharing info about possible sightings and clues.
Psychologically, people just felt very close to her because of social media.
But here's the despairing truth. Gabby Petito is one of so many reported missing each year. At the end of 2020, the FBI had over 89,000 active missing persons cases. 45% of those cases, people of color. Petito's story has renewed debate about which cases get attention and the media's seeming infatuation with missing white women. But her case also sparked a call to action to bring others home, like Daniel Robinson, a 24-year-old geologist who went missing in the desert outside Buckeye, Arizona in late June. His Jeep was found mangled July 19th, about 4 miles from where he was last seen. The Buckeye Police Department says in a statement, investigators are utilizing every resource possible to locate him, including assistance from partner agencies and information provided by the public. His family has also organized searches in the desert heat.
I thank God for all the volunteers who left their houses every morning, in the mornings, and spend out time out there in the desert.
There's also Maya Miliete and Jelani Day. Miliete, a mother of 3, has been missing for over 9 months. The 39-year-old was last seen at her family home in Chula Vista, California. Day, a 25-year-old graduate student at Illinois State University, was last seen August 24th in Bloomington, Illinois. His car was discovered 2 days later, but no signs of Day.
Jelani is, he's a sweetheart. I shouldn't have to beg. I shouldn't have to plead. I shouldn't have to feel that there is a racial disparity. I shouldn't have to feel any of that. I want these people that have these resources to realize this could happen to them.
That go into a decision to put a story in the headlines, to include it in a newscast. And look, the Petito story absolutely did go viral for a lot of reasons, and you have to admit there was so much video, frankly, of her. She said such an online presence that part of the story certainly was a part of it becoming viral. And people who are criticizing media coverage are not trying to take away from the newsworthiness of her story or take anything away from the Petito family. They just want to argue as well, Kira, that there are so many others, so many other families out there still waiting for word and also waiting for the same kind of attention possibly to their stories for their loved ones as well.
TJ, thanks so much. We're going to continue this conversation. You may remember the late PBS anchor Gwen Ifill famously dubbed it missing white woman syndrome, the historic tendency for national attention to just gloss over cases of missing people of color. Joining us to discuss, op-ed columnist Elsie Granderson, also associate professor at Brandeis University, Leah Wright-Rigueur, both ABC News contributors. Leah, let's start with you. And you know, TJ points out in his piece that 45% of active missing persons cases are people of color. Let's start there. Why?
Well, I think there are a lot of reasons for this. You know, mainly one of the things that we see is that in these cases, the individuals who are, you know, who go unnoticed by the system are often poor or working class Black women who get overlooked. And they're overlooked for a number of reasons. One, there is an inability, I think, by larger populations to empathize with the situation or the experience of these often missing young Black people, particularly Black women. But there's also an emphasis from institutions and structures surrounding this that places kind of the emphasis on personal responsibility. So if a Black girl goes missing, it's not about us engaging in public safety or, surrounding institutions being on the lookout for this. Instead, the assumption is that she must be missing because she ran away. She's missing because of her own fault, right? It's her own fault that she's on the run. So we don't have the same kind of empathy. We don't offer the same kind of treatment for these individuals, and we certainly don't offer the same kind of attention and care that we offer to other populations.
And LZ, picking up on that, according to the Black and Missing Foundation, the fact that there's a foundation, it's called the Black and Missing Foundation, speaks volumes about where we are on this. They say that when minority children are reported missing, the cases are often treated as runaways. So let's talk about power in law enforcement and media. How is that distorted here? What do you see in the way law enforcement addresses cases when children of color and adults of color are missing, and the media as well?
Well, there are a lot of things at play in terms of how this is being processed. But I think the first and foremost is that if you just think historically about the way that people of color have been written about, portrayed, reported, it's a pretty clear narrative that has been set over the decades where you're either a criminal or somehow, as your guest was just mentioning, there's a failure in personal responsibility. In other words, it's not the system or it's not some outside influence that has led you to the predicament that you're in, but it's a failure on your own individual self. So once you begin to frame a conversation through that lens, and you get to some of the other aspects of the question you're talking about, Terry, such as they're missing, why aren't people looking for them? Well, it's really easy to see how people have a lack of empathy for the situation, because when they see them, they don't see them as possibly being victims, whereas somehow they are contributors to the predicament that they're in. I will also add that this overall conversation that we're having, both right now as well as other networks and newspapers are having, is not really an indictment on whiteness in America or women in America or white women in America. It is an observation supported by data done by studies in both media as well as sociological spaces that has shown there is a disparity that is real. Gwen Ifill, my friend and mentor, the great late Gwen Ifill, coined a phrase, but she didn't make up the reality. Missing white women syndrome is something that has been proven. And what that does is just reiterates whose life is worth protecting, who can be seen as a vulnerable individual, and who is being seen as someone who's not being responsible for their own lives.
Leah, let's jump in on that and talk about that, okay? And it's not just Gabby Petito that's making national headlines here. I mean, we can go back to Elizabeth Smart. Remember that kidnapping, the unsolved disappearance of Natalie Holloway, the murder of Laci Peterson. I mean, let's just be transparent. Young, attractive, blonde, white women. How does that, except for Laci, she was brunette, but she was young and beautiful white woman. How do these cases, what is it about these women that capture the national attention?
Sure, and just before we jump into that, I do want to point out that the laundry list of missing Black women is extensive. And I think it is important to, in this conversation, at least name some of them. We're not having discussions about LaKira Goldsmith of Alabama, who's been missing for some time, or Unique Harris from Maryland, who has been missing for over a decade right now. But it's important that as part of this conversation, part of this larger media conversation, that we also actually begin to bring those names into mainstream spaces. Because certainly, I think Black organizations, Indigenous-led organizations, organizations led by, I think, minority-focused voices, particularly in news media, have spent a considerable amount of time attentive to these issues, but they still don't get the kind of platforming around their issues that, say, again, a Laci Peterson might, or an Elizabeth Smart, or something like that. And again, I also think that part of what we see with the kind of attention that these women get is because we place an emphasis, and I'm speaking here about institutions as part of our larger society, but we place an emphasis on protecting these kinds of women. We think about what they represent, and historically, this has been true. Historically, white womanhood has been something to be protected in these spaces by institutions, but also by communities and by individuals. So when we see kind of these young women who are presented as vulnerable, and certainly they are, right? They have been taken advantage of. In this case that we're all talking about, this is a woman who has been murdered. So, but the attention, the kind of platform, and the way that the institutions care for these stories and these narratives really is about protecting what they see as vulnerable, what is deserving of protection. And part of the message that this sends is that there is only one type that is deserving of attention, that is deserving of protection, as opposed to all of these other thousands of individuals of different racial backgrounds, of different ethnic backgrounds, that are also worthy of attention and worthy of this kind of investment in safety.
All right, and Elsie, just to pick up quickly on that, if we can expand the discussion. I love what Leo Red-Rigueur said right there. There's one thing about statistics. There's nothing about whose stories get told, and that narrative power that connects with people. And it is people of color, and the long list. About a fifth of missing person cases involving minorities are covered by the media. But also, if Gabby were 63 years old, if she were 80 pounds heavier, as Kira just pointed out, all different issues where we don't see the full humanity, we don't tell the full story. How can we remedy that?
Well, it's up to us in the news industry to begin changing the way that we decide what's important. To be quite honest with you, as I said earlier, this is not simply about an observation of a cultural aspect of it, but it really is an opportunity for us as an industry to do some own self-reflecting, because we've set the tone over the decades. Remember that infamous Time magazine cover of O.J. Simpson and how they unnecessarily darkened his image while talking about the case he was involved with. There was only one reason to darken the image, and that was to play into a stereotype that has long been embodied in this country's history about dark-skinned men. And so when you talk about, how do we change the dynamic that's been in place, it really is about when we're sitting in our newsroom meetings early in the morning, or when we're talking to our editors or going back and forth with our producers, challenging those narratives that we've supported over and over again through our own platforms, saying, yeah, we understand this, but what else is there? Because as much as it is as enjoyable as it may be to point a finger at and blame other people, this missing white women syndrome that we're talking of is really something the media itself created, and thus it's up to the media to address it.
A lot of work ahead for us and for the country. Elsie Granderson, Leo Red-Rigueur, thank you very much for a really rich discussion.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.
The Washington Post recently calculated that in one 7-day span in September, Gabby Petito's name was mentioned over 800 times on the 3 major cable news networks. The round-the-clock media coverage surrounding Gabby's disappearance and death has ignited this important conversation about the lack of attention when the victim or person missing is of color. Even Gabby's father, as I mentioned, Joe Petito, urged the press to cover other stories and wondered why they weren't.
I want to ask everyone to help all of the people that are missing and need help. And like I said before, it's on all of you, everyone that's in this room, to do that. And if you don't do that for other people that are missing, that's a shame. Because it's not just Gabby that deserves that. So look to yourselves on why that's not being done.
Joining us now to help us understand the why is NPR's media correspondent David Folkenflik and Dr. Danielle Slakoff, an assistant professor at Sacramento State University who co-authored a study on what is called missing white woman syndrome. Thank you both for joining us today. Dr. Slakoff, I'll start with you. I've had to do this soul searching as well, been in way too many newsrooms. When Gwen Ifill said missing white woman syndrome, and my dear friend Joanne Reed repeated that recently on MSNBC, she was attacked instantly by some pretending as if we haven't been having this conversation. And we know we have. How do you process this at this point?
Yeah, it's interesting that we have seen so much discussion around the missing white woman syndrome this year because it is not a new concept. As you mentioned, Gwen Ifill coined this term in 2004, but there is a long history of these types of narratives.
David, when you saw Gabby Petito's father turn and point at the media, it was like a spear through our souls. I don't care if you're local or national, if you don't see the damage that's done by this imbalance, then you don't want to see it. How do you explain why it keeps happening, David?
I think that if you look on the local level, oftentimes the sin has been to pathologize people of color, to treat them only as the victims of crimes. And yet when we question when things are elevated to national attention and scrutiny and focus and hyper focus, they're almost erased from the picture. In this case, Gabby Petito, there was a narrative, right? You had a young woman at the early outset of her life, promise ahead of her, years of life, decades of life ahead of her, and you had uncertainty in that we didn't know how her story would end. She was missing. She had not been killed yet. So you have suspense, which if we put aside the terrible tragedy of her loss, which should not be done, nonetheless means that as a story, it is going to hook a viewer and a reader's interest. And then you add another element. She chronicled what she was doing on social media. And so there were photographs, videos, some of which we just saw on screen just now, that allowed us to see her in the moment and to hear her in her own words, something that journalists are desperate to do to capture and reflect the nature and texture of a person's life. All of that says, well, why does this story work? It works. But let's not think too hard about this. This was a young, white, blonde woman who looked like, to many media executives, the girls next door. And we often have to interrogate and ask ourselves, next door to whom?
Yeah.
Whose younger sister does this look like? Whose best friend does this look like? Whose niece does this look like? Well, it looks like that for a certain section of Americans that media executives and advertisers tend to pitch toward, but that leaves out so many others.
You just said next door to whom. That is actually the line that I wrote in this novel, this fictitious character, because I lived it in the newsroom where I never liked the moniker girl next door. So I'm like, well, next door to who? Because depending on where you live, that determines what that girl next door looks like. Dr. Slakoff, can you speak to that pack mentality that once one news organization sees someone covering it, then we all fall in line? Can you speak to that and the impact it has on coverage?
I think this case was an example of what this looks like. We saw tons of traditional and social media attention, and it started to essentially feed off of each other. And there is some research that points to that when the major media starts to cover a case, it basically makes it so that other media start to as well. And I think that you saw it with the ballooning of coverage here. You really saw that play out in Gabby's case.
For people who don't understand, if this continues, David, what harm does this, the larger harm, does this cause?
There's a terrible cost, I think, to suggesting to Americans that broad swaths of people are not worthy of our attention, that their tragedies and struggles and aspirations are not equally of value to those who are so often depicted as the heroes and heroines of the stories that are told through the media. The media uses attention to justify continued attention. You know, Gabby Petito was documenting this on social media, but very few people were following her, a little over 1,000 when she was actually doing it, which is actually not bad for Instagram, but I'm saying, you know, it's hardly a dominant media influencer. Before her body was found, but while the public search for her was becoming a national story, she had gotten up to 1.1 million followers. People pointed to that to justify the coverage. The New York Times pointed to a circle of reporters surrounding her parents' home in Florida to justify why its reporters were there doing exactly the same thing.
Dr. Slakoff, when people say, well, there's only 30 minutes in a newscast, maybe an hour, depending on if it's a magazine show, that obviously the news can't be 30 minutes of here are all the missing people around the world, around the country, I should say. How do you get it right then?
You know, I am maybe naive in this, but I am hopeful that this conversation that we're having right now, Tamron, and the others like it, are going to lead to changes. I think that newsrooms can commit to more equitable coverage, and that the conversation we're having right now is a huge part of that, letting people know that we see the inequitable coverage and that it is a problem.
Thank you both for speaking out and joining the show. I appreciate you both joining me today.
Thank you.
Sigurli swagwag, Galahindi neo gets wagi sliwagi ni waki the loda, and the dog and Gwenage, Ani Bojo, Dante, Akinapi again. Doing a really here, let me just do this again. Just trying to test out a couple of different things here as well today while I'm trying to throw some of this stuff out at you. For example, you may have seen this, but I got a new hug command, which gives us a cute little bear doing the hug, which is just something I've just added. So that'll pop anytime that you hug someone. And I also I wanted to kind of give Fantastic Kitties thing a little bit of a larger look to it because it was looking a little small before, and people it was hard to probably see it. So I'm going to try to make some of those a little bit bigger so that they show up better. And so this camera I'm working with right now is actually an old iPhone that I had laying around. So I thought I would try to see how the camera works. So just testing that out. Was there another command I did? Oh, the hello. So that also is a little bit bigger, just so that people can actually see the hello. Because although I saw it before, I was finding that unless you were paying attention, you didn't really you could miss the hello before. I think I've got it now, so that you can't really miss it now. Casca, hey, welcome in. Sigoli, nice to see you. I use something called Triggerfire, and I use Nightbot to set up my commands. And I also, of course, for my OBS, I'm using Twitch Studio versus using. I know that a lot of people like to use Stream Elements and Streamlabs for the OBS apps. So, which is fine. And I find that Triggerfire works really well with everything that I do here. So that's so I just create I get the GIFs or I create it. For example, I did a video of myself a few years ago that I actually use now for part of my channel points, which I've just updated to this, which is little chipmunk. So I've created that I converted it into a GIF file. And that way I could just upload it into Triggerfire and use it as a channel point so people can see a cute little chipper. And then I had when I did my 1K celebration, a friend of ours came on stream named Kenny's Prog Rock, came in and clipped us doing a little dance because we said if we ever hit 1K, I would do a dance in a onesie, which I ended up having to get, and then of course Fantastic Kitty decided she would get a onesie as well, and then the crowd convinced her to come on and dance with me on camera. So and if you know Fantastic Kitty, she is not the type of person who likes to be in front of the camera. She really prefers to be behind the camera. So so it was quite an accomplishment to actually get a clip of her dancing. So now, before I go into I have a little short, like a 25-minute documentary. And but before I do that, I actually have something I wanted to share because this is actually a celebratory thing. Anybody who doesn't know, there was awards last night, and there was a recent movie that was put out by Martin Scorsese, and this starred a woman by the name of Lily Gladstone, an Indigenous actress who actually won the Golden Globe for Best Actress. And I wanted to share her acceptance speech so that you could, first of all, we can celebrate the fact that she's the first Indigenous woman to ever win this award, but also the fact that this movie strikes some subjects that people find difficult to have discussions about, but this may ultimately, because it's a Hollywood movie and it's got Hollywood stars, there's Leonardo DiCaprio's in it. It was done by Martin Scorsese. So there's a lot of big names in it. For this Indigenous woman to actually win the Golden Globe for Best Actress, I think is phenomenal that happened. So I wanted to again share her acceptance speech so you can hear what she said when she won this award.
Okinek sokoeks, netane ko pitaki mahtoto sekseketsetapi. Nitsakakum. I love everyone in this room right now. Thank you. I don't have words. I just spoke a bit of Blackfeet language, a beautiful community nation that raised me, that encouraged me to keep going, keep doing this. I'm here with my mom, who, even though she's not Blackfeet, worked tirelessly to get our language into our classroom. So I had a Blackfeet language teacher growing up. Iksukapit Edward North Pagan. This award belongs to, and I hope I don't get counted down too fast because this is an historic one. I'm so grateful that I can speak even a little bit of my language, which I'm not fluent in up here, because in this business, Native actors used to speak their lines in English, and then the sound mixers would run them backwards to accomplish Native languages on camera. This is an historic win. It doesn't belong to just me. I'm holding it right now. I'm holding it with all of my beautiful sisters and the film at this table over here, and my mother, Tantu Cardinal, standing on all of your shoulders. Thank you, Marty. Thank you, Leo. Thank you, Bob. You are all changing things. Thank you for being such allies. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Chief Standing Bear, and big ol' Wewina to Wajaje Osage Nation. This, I'm at a loss for what else to say. Thank you, Apple. Thank you, my manager. Thank you, my agent, Jill and Sasha. Thank you to all of you, and this is for every little res kid, every little urban kid, every little Native kid out there who has a dream, who is seeing themselves represented and our stories told by ourselves in our own words, with tremendous allies and tremendous trust from with and from each other. So thank you all so much. I'm wearing Valentino because it went so well on the Cannes red carpet. Just had to do it again.
Yes.
And representing a little Blackfeet design, Laniso Misu with Antelope Women Designs, complimenting Bulgari.
Oh my gosh, you're doing it all. It's amazing.
Yes, and get it right, yes.
Sorry. A lot of chords, a lot of fabric, a lot of chords.
Gladstone, first, I feel like I have to thank you for all the representation, not just about Indigenous women, but you teach us how to stand for Black lives, you teach us to stand for Stop Asian Hate. Tell us the message when it comes to how we need to stand united. What is it that we need to know?
We're all related, you know? If it happens to one of us, it's happening to all of us. It's so easy to look at our differences, and it's important to be proud of what makes us different, what makes us unique. If we're really embracing an equal, pluralistic society, it's because we feel confident in who we are, it's because we feel seen, because we feel represented. So when we have representation, it only goes to create a more just, more equitable society, because, you know, a lot of people learn how to be by watching movies, TV, film. You know, they accompany us through our whole lives, our favorite programs. And when we start seeing ourselves, we feel proud of who we are, and then we're excited to learn about who other people are as well.
It's amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have so much fun
We
tonight.
love you, Lily.
We're rooting for you.
Bye.
Tell us about your look.
I'm wearing Valentino because it went so well on the Cannes red carpet. Just had to do it again.
Okay. So hopefully you heard her. You just couldn't hear me. Okay, yeah. I didn't want to interrupt her. So for those of you who don't know, this is the movie that she was nominated for.
My land. Well, our war hero has arrived. You made a good choice coming back here. Osage are the finest, wealthiest, and most beautiful people on God's earth. They outsmarted everybody. They have the say. Who gets the oil? Son, I got a question. You like women?
That's my weakness.
Well, we mix these families together, and that estate money flows the right direction. It'll come to us.
Shomikasi. That's how you are.
I don't know what you said, but it must have been Indian for handsome devil.
Why did you come here?
I work with my uncle.
You scared of him?
Oh, he's the nicest man in the world.
The Osage, their time is over. We got to take back control of our home. I was sent down from Washington, D.C. to see about these murders.
We have so many deaths, we've lost count.
There's just bad luck. Seems more like an epidemic than bad luck to me.
Osage is dying by the enemy. Do not let them die alone.
Evil surrounds my heart.
You gotta pick a side.
I don't even know if you love me anymore.
Of course I love you.
And kill these men who killed my family.
Did your wife say who she was most afraid of? through something you're going to regret for the rest of your life. I ain't got nothing but regret.
We optioned the book 7-8 years ago, and it was a fascinating piece of forgotten history, but it was told from the perspective of the FBI. And we developed a screenplay soon after that. But there was a dynamic missing there that we ultimately felt that we weren't getting to the heart of the story. We weren't immersed in the Osage community the way we wanted to be. And there was 2 short sequences of Ernest and Molly together, which was this insanely bizarre love story, something that was hard to fathom in a lot of ways, how this woman stuck by someone who was so duplicitous. But it was true. All of it was true. And so from that point on, we said to ourselves, well, what if we take the chance in getting to the heart of this story and the Osage community and this insane dynamic in Oklahoma at that time and what was going on? What if we made it about, Molly and Ernest? And that was another 4-year journey of rewriting and once again going to Oklahoma to meet with the Osage. There was another chapter of development of getting even further into the truth of that story and trying to be as honest as we possibly could about the atrocities that occurred. But it was really, when we made that shift to it being about Ernest and Molly and their love for one another, it opened up a whole new arena of ideas for us, and it took on a whole new life of its own.
Okay, so there's that. So we're getting back. So again, we want to celebrate the fact that Lily Gladstone is the first Indigenous woman to win a Golden Globe for Best Actress in a motion picture film. So quite the accomplishment, and big props to her for that. Definitely well deserving. And Osage, for those of you who don't know, like that was in that clip, it is a forgotten history, and of course that's probably because the way the history was written, very Eurocentric friendly, and not necessarily put in the way of reality oftentimes. So um, there's definitely that, and so getting back to what we were talking about prior to that little segment, um, the missing and murdered Indigenous women epidemic that's happening here in Canada. December 30th, for those of you who didn't hear or see my note earlier, was a 21-year-old Indigenous woman, Thunder Bay, called 911 for help in a domestic situation. The police did not respond to her message or her call, and 3 calls later, they went to her home and found that she was dead. So there's now currently an internal investigation into why the police did not respond in the first place, and kind of going from there and seeing if there's some systemic issues that need to change. Obviously, I think there have always been systemic issues that need to be changed, and a complete overhaul, in my opinion, of how we handle things. And I mean, we've made some strides over the years, but there's so much more work, so much more work to do, honestly. Uh, but this is not an issue that is restricted to the area that we call Canada. This is also happening in the USA. So this next clip I'm going to show you is about California. I've shown you a couple documentaries before that were focused on Montana, because that's a big issue in Montana. Also on the Highway of Tears in British Columbia, here in Canada, Manitoba, Vancouver, all have issues. And then, so this particular clip is going to show you what's happening in California and give you kind of some of the same ideas as to what's been happening around the rest of Turtle Island. So I'm going to get my my mug off the screen, and we'll get this started. So that, it's only again, it's only about 25 minutes long, so not really crazy. And then we'll see where we're at that point here.
Missing and murdered Indigenous women, their cases never solved. In Northern California's most rustic landscape, behind this redwood curtain, lies a dark and devastating mystery.
Got a phone call one day that my daughter was missing.
Mothers, daughters, and sisters all vanishing into thin air.
It's not safe. I could disappear and nobody would know.
Resources are scarce.
She was worthy of a search. She's still worthy.
The tribe has essentially been told, well, you can't have jurisdiction for certain things. The county's in charge of that, but we're not going to give the county any extra money.
We explore California's dark past that makes these tribal communities so vulnerable.
You're looking at the massacres, of which there were a number. You're looking at boarding schools, and you're looking at indentured slaves.
And a look at the efforts to right those wrongs, starting with an entirely new justice system.
They fought for me. If they didn't, I would end up in prison again.
I'm Elizabeth Cook. We're shedding light on an unseen crisis here in California, the growing number of missing and murdered Indigenous women. Our state has the largest Native American population in the United States, but women living on these tribal lands are especially vulnerable. 84% of them experience some form of violence and are 10 times more likely to be murdered. And because there's no database for these types of cases, there's no accurate count on just how many women have vanished. Among the missing, Emily Risling. She vanished from the Yurok Reservation in Northern California. And a little-known federal law may actually be hindering the investigation into her case and many others. Alongside the Klamath River, near the side of a road, there's a weather-beaten flyer. On it, the face of an Indigenous woman, 33-year-old Emily Risling. She's been missing for more than a year.
I think the most heartbreaking thing is that you just may never see that person's face again.
She had everything going for her in the right direction, and the things started falling apart.
Emily's parents, Gary and Judy, are heartbroken. Their daughter vanished into thin air. Her case is growing cold.
It's really simple. We want to know what happened, where she is.
What we do know,
Hi!
as a child, Emily was a ray of light, full of joy, so much love, so much potential.
Hey.
From an early age, she embraced her Native identity.
She loved her culture. She loved her family.
The straight-A student had lots of friends and went to college on a scholarship. Then her world began to crumble. A boyfriend violently abused her. She began to use drugs.
And so this young woman who was so bright, so capable, so, the world was her oyster, she kind of became a different person.
Her parents told me after the birth of her second child, Emily developed postpartum psychosis. She was arrested for igniting a fire in a cemetery and put in jail. Her parents hoped she would finally be forced into treatment.
The DA's office, her family, all were against letting her out, and they did.
A few days later, everything changed.
So give us some perspective of where we are.
So we're on 169 at Pequon Bridge, and this bridge is the last confirmed place that we know Emily was at.
Greg O'Rourke is police chief of the Yurok tribe. The bridge is on Yurok land, more than 2 hours from Emily's home. He believes she got here by hitchhiking.
Here on the bridge is where we can confirm multiple witnesses.
But if a major crime involving Emily occurred here or anywhere else on tribal lands in California, the tribe has no jurisdiction to investigate it. So who's in charge when someone is murdered or goes missing on tribal land? The answer to that involves a dark chapter in federal Indian policy. It's known as Public Law 280.
So it's taken away a tribe's ability, or at least in theory, their sovereignty to be able to have their own people, have their own law enforcement, and investigate crimes on the reservation and put that onto the state.
Congress passed the law in 1953 without the consent of tribes. It greatly enlarged the power of certain states, including California, to handle major crimes on Indian reservations, but with no additional funding.
The sheriff's office has jurisdiction on tribal land. And so you're having government come in and telling a sovereign nation of what crimes that we're going to enforce on their land. This is our booking area.
William Hansel is sheriff of Humboldt County. He sees this law as a roadblock to solving cases.
When there's no trust involved, oftentimes we can't even get our foot in the door to have an interview.
That said, Emily's family is angry. They feel law enforcement has given up.
You guys have been accused of not doing enough, and you've got the money, you've got the resources. Where are you when it comes to these cases?
Yeah. So I think a lot of things have changed over the years, because a lot of times I think where there was jurisdictional boundaries, a lot of times there was finger pointing. Who's going to investigate this? Who's going to follow up with this?
Both the sheriff and local tribes are dealing with the lack of money and manpower in a county the size of Connecticut that's home to 11 tribes. It's also way off the grid.
It's an extremely remote area. You know, when people talk about rural, then there's us.
The Yurok Reservation itself is 85 square miles. Easy to see how Emily could just disappear.
I think the system failed Emily all along.
All Judy and Gary have left are memories, birthdays, holidays, and her smiling face. Emily's son, their grandson David, wants to know.
Can you take me, Grandpa, to go down and look for my mom? And if we can find her, we'll find her. And he looks at me and he goes, well, what happens if we can't find her? I said, David, we'll just keep looking.
Just this year, California's Feather Alert was implemented to help bring women like Emily home. It works a little bit like our Amber Alert system, where the CHP will put out immediate information about a missing Indigenous person if all available tribal resources have been exhausted. So why are these women so vulnerable? Well, to understand that, we may have to look to California's brutal treatment of Indigenous tribes in the past. One example, children taken from their parents and sent off to boarding schools. Here's a picture from 1881 of a group of newly arrived children. 7 months later, another photo with all signs of their native culture erased. Coming up after the break, how the trauma of the past is still felt in Indigenous communities.
You know, things happen to us as a result of an invasion and a lot of bad behavior. And we took on some of that behavior.
Haunting images of headstones in an overgrown field, many of the names completely faded away. They represent the 65 Indigenous children who died while attending a boarding school in Riverside, their remains far away from their homes. Indigenous children were often taken from their parents and sent off to boarding schools to be assimilated into white culture. And even generations later, the trauma is still felt.
Redwood canoes are once again gliding on the Klamath.
We're actually getting a glimpse into our way of life before colonization.
For Yurok tribal leader Philip Williams, it's a way to connect to his ancestors.
It's important that we don't lose this culture.
For thousands of years, these hand-carved dugouts traveled the river. The Yurok tribe revived the tradition. But it's not just the canoes that nearly went extinct.
It's hard to accept the fact that there was a society that wanted you gone.
During the gold rush, government officials funded a campaign to slaughter California's Indians. In just 20 years, 80% of the population was wiped out. Some say this contempt for native life continues to this day.
Some people out there think we should just die and go away.
And that this disregard is now reflected in the crisis of missing and murdered Indigenous women. For this tribal leader, it's personal.
I lost my daughter 5 years ago.
His daughter Tara went missing and was later found dead near her crashed truck. He says he'll never know the full story.
We've been losing people all the time. Unsolved mysteries up here all the time.
As for the historical wrongs, they include more than massacres. There was a systematic attempt to erase traditional values, behaviors, and beliefs by forcing Indian children into boarding schools.
Forget your culture, forget your life, and assimilate, become a white person.
A recent federal report reveals that from 1819 through 1969, the U.S. operated more than 400 Indian boarding schools. 12 were in California. Indigenous children were forcibly removed from their families and communities. Children who resisted assimilating were often punished with whippings, solitary confinement, or starvation. So what do these wrongs have to do with the missing and murdered women?
You know, things happen to us as a result of an invasion and a lot of bad behavior. And we took on some of that behavior.
Abby Abenanti is the chief judge of the Yurok tribe. She believes the traumatized children, some who were enslaved by wealthy landowners, passed their pain, suffering, and coping mechanisms onto the next generations.
Many of them would run home, but they came home having not been parented and with a lot of bad habits because they were beaten and whatever.
Habits including substance abuse and domestic violence that can lead to mental illness. The challenge is how to break this destructive cycle.
So this is Chinook acorns right here.
Many believe that effort includes reconnecting to traditional values and beliefs.
Do you feel like when you gather acorns, you're in some way connecting yourself to your grandmother?
Oh, absolutely. I do.
Teralyn Ipina shows me how she gathers acorns, a traditional food still used by Indigenous tribes. Teralyn's grandmother was murdered. Recognizing the trauma is helping her break the cycle for her daughters.
When we're talking about it, I'm talking to my kids about it. And they didn't know because I didn't talk about it. It's so painful.
For Philip Williams, reclaiming the Yurok heritage is one step closer to healing. But he knows it won't take away the pain from those still waiting for resolution.
My daughter was found. I can't imagine what it would have felt like if she wasn't found. I have closure. I buried my daughter. They don't have that.
So what exactly is happening to these missing women? Well, we'll hear from Attorney General Rob Bonta coming up, why he says the answer is complicated.
Some tragically are being murdered, are kidnapped, trafficked.
This past week, the first ever commemoration at the state capitol to honor and recognize missing and murdered Indigenous people. Tribal members from California and beyond attended. Among the speakers, Assemblyman James Ramos, the first Native American to serve in the state legislature, and State Attorney General Rob Bonta, who pledged his commitment to work with the tribes on this issue.
We are joined now by California Attorney General Rob Bonta. Thank you so much for being with us. You know, there's so much unknown as to what actually is happening to these women. I'm curious, what do you think is happening to them?
I don't think it's one thing. I think it's probably a variety of different outcomes and unique incidents. Some tragically are being murdered, are kidnapped, trafficked, Some are, dying in other types of ways for those who are passing away. Some may have drowned, some may have overdosed on drugs. And so I think it would be wrong to focus on just one type of possibility. It's important to keep them all on the table.
You know, Public Law 280 has made it very difficult for these tribes to prosecute and investigate these cases of missing women. I know your administration has made investments and initiatives to try to make up for what Public Law 280 takes away from some of these tribes. Do you see a scenario where the government puts an end to this law that seems to be doing a lot more harm than good for these different indigenous tribes across the nation?
To be clear, Public Law 280 was passed by the federal government, not the state of California. The way it has actually played out on the ground is that the state and local law enforcement have had a significant role when it comes to criminal enforcement. And based on where the tribes are and some of the adjacent responding law enforcement departments, they tend to be in some places that are often more rural, have smaller law enforcement departments, have less resources. And that leads to sometimes response times that are not what we all would hope for. That lies very squarely in the court of the federal government.
On April 22nd, you announced a DNA collection program where people could voluntarily give their DNA that could help not only in investigations, but also identifying some of these missing women. I'm curious, what was the response to that program?
It's been a positive response so far, and not without challenges that we want to make sure we address head on. We need DNA samples from family members. It could be a sample of the missing person's hairbrush, or that could have their DNA on it. It could be the DNA of a parent or a sibling, and then we can match that against a database of DNA of folks that are unidentified. And we want to absolutely emphasize and say without any doubt that any DNA provided will only be used to help identify missing people. It won't be used for any other purpose, including for criminal investigations. The DNA will be destroyed once the missing person has been identified.
What do you want to say to the families of these missing women who feel that they have been overlooked, ignored, and they just want closure? They want answers as to where their loved ones are, and they're looking to you for those answers and any kind of help. What do you want to say to those family members?
I want to say I see you. I value you. I am so sorry for the pain and the anguish that you are suffering, that you're enduring, and that we will take action with you in mind, top of mind. We will prioritize your challenges, your concerns, your worries, your anxiety, your pain to help get you the answers that you deserve.
An emphasis on healing and rebuilding lives. Up next, we'll take you inside the tribal courtroom that's taking a new approach to justice.
I don't think humans respond well to punishment and consequencing. I think they respond well to our approach.
How does a community move forward from centuries of mistreatment? Part of the solution for the Yurok tribe is a brand new justice system, all focused on healing and tradition.
They helped me change my life in so many ways.
His name is Lawrence Orcutt.
Well, I used to be, to say it bluntly, a criminal.
With a long rap sheet that includes drugs, domestic violence, and DUIs. So when Orcutt got arrested again, he was on the cusp of losing everything. Then he got a dose of tribal justice.
They fought for me. And if they didn't, I would have ended up in prison again.
Okay, we'll hear the case again in 2 weeks.
Welcome to the Yurok Wellness Court.
I'm glad that you guys, were able to get her into treatment.
The court uses a holistic approach that draws upon Yurok teachings, activities, and rituals. The goal? To provide a path to mental, physical, and spiritual healing.
Did you connect to that in that way when you were here in this wellness court?
There is a lot more traditional aspects to it. It's not, we're gonna get you in trouble or put you in jail if you mess up. It's more like, let me help you. And that's huge to me.
The program was created by this woman, Yurok Tribal Chief Judge Abby Abenanti. As to why a different approach was needed,
I don't think humans respond well to punishment and consequencing. I think they respond well to our approach.
Judge Abby is highly qualified to know. Born in San Francisco, she grew up in Humboldt County. Female tribal leaders insisted she become an attorney.
That's the first lesson. You cannot win an argument with 3 old Indian ladies. So I went to law school.
Abenanti became California's first Native American female lawyer. She spent 20 years as a commissioner for the San Francisco Superior Court. When she returned home, she saw a community overburdened with domestic violence, substance abuse, and mental illness.
So all that behavior came from somewhere. And once you understand that, then you have a fighting chance of getting on the other side of it.
That means recognizing real harm was done by Indian boarding schools, indentured servitude, and massacres, and that these traumas are passed down as destructive behavior within families. The question?
How do you want to stop this? Do you want your children to do this? Or do you want to stop it with you?
Many believe this history plays a role in the crisis of the murdered and missing Indigenous women.
I think that people who don't interact with tribal sovereign nations and tribal governments frequently don't really understand how they're treated differently under the law.
Rosemary Deck is prosecutor for the Yurok tribe. Her office recently hired an investigator who will only focus on cases involving these women. The U.S. Marshals are now also involved. The unseen are finally becoming less invisible.
I think that they're starting to pay attention, and it's too late, but it's better late than never.
As for Lawrence,
I like being a dad.
he now owns his own construction company, has plenty of work, and is closer to his family.
The judge.
Sure, how are you?
Our day ended with a chance encounter
Thank you.
with the judge who oversaw his case, building a bridge from the past to the future, with a little help from Tribal Healing.
Now, many of the children whose mothers are missing or murdered end up in the foster care system. And now Judge Abby Abenanti is also working to protect them from being abused or going missing themselves.
In California and in many states, for instance, if a foster child does not come home at night, nobody is notified. There's no alert system. So you're just lost. And a lot of trafficked children come out of the foster care system because it's fairly easy to do that. So we're working on trying to address those issues with the state legislature.
And that legislation calls for more oversight from the courts and an alert system that would keep tabs on foster kids who don't return home. The faces of these missing women motivated us to tell their stories. And as we wrap up, we want to thank the members of the Yurok tribe for welcoming us into their homes. We'll have more on this unseen crisis on our website, kpix.com. Thank you for joining us.
Tugalis wagwag. Galakindi nia gets wagisli wagi. Niwa kitaloda on the da gungahamanega. Ani bojo Dante Hokinapi how Yanko Yukodola. And again, for anyone who joined late, I always try to introduce myself in my original language. So I said, hello everyone. Galakindi is my name. Means clouds passing over. I'm a member of the people of the Standing Stone First Nations here on the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, Delaware, and Huron nations in an area that we call the Dish with One Spoon Covenant Treaty Territory. So the Dish with One Spoon was actually an agreement or a treaty, if you will, that was set up prior to settler arrival, and still the idea of it still exists today. And the purpose of the Dish with One Spoon was to make it sustainable for all of the nations that lived in this area. So the Haudenosaunee, which are the people that build, and the Anishinaabe nations would agree to share the land in a way that was sustainable. So that meant that you never took more than you had to, that you needed in order to ensure that there was enough left for other people, the other nations that were living in the same area. And I think that to a certain point, we need to kind of get back to that mentality and get back to the roots of that tradition. So learning how to um, give back whenever we take our medicine. So if we harvest a medicine, we want to put a medicine back to Mother Earth. So anytime tobacco is typically going to be our offering medicine. So when we harvest medicines like cedar and sage and sweetgrass, we always take tobacco with us to offer to Mother Earth as a thank you for providing that to us. Tobacco is also used for our elders when we're given guidance or we're given a teaching or someone conducts a ceremony. You typically will take tobacco as an offering of thanks and gratitude for what they've done. And so the last thing I'm going to share today before we go out is I discussed this a little bit before, but I wanted to let you hear this because some of the people who are here regularly have heard a couple people talk about uh, the words before all else. So I won't go into the whole translation of it today, but I just wanted you to hear what it sounds like so that you can recognize the point of it. And it's an idea. Some people call it a prayer, which it's not really a prayer, but I see how it can be interpreted that way. And some people call it a greeting, and which is it's also not really a greeting, although it is done at the beginning of any ceremony or community event, that kind of thing that we do. So it is called the words before all else, is essentially the translation of it. So let me go here for a second and this way. And I'll get this playing for you just so that you can kind of get a vibe for it. What I'll do is, because this is just a test stream, I wasn't really planning on being on for very long, I'll share this now, but the next time I do this, I will actually give you the English translation of it so that you can understand what was being said today.
Gungilkwa zawadahan sios ona angadaswa o handagali wadakwa. Ungwet su'a gwegwaska njedidawa wet nuni ni gwat nigula dana de tinu haladas na ungwet su'a tinu dohak ni gwat nigula. Agwegwaska njedidawa wet nuni ni gwat nigula dana de tinu haladas ni yakini ista ohun jage tinu dohak ni gwat nigula. Agwegwaska njedidawa wet nuni ni gwat nigula dana de tinu haladas na ohun de su'a tinu dohak ni gwat nigula. Agwegwaska njedidawa wet nuni ni gwat nigula dana de tinu haladas na onu kwat su'a tinu dohak ni gwat nigula. Agwegwaska njedidawa wet nuni ni gwat nigula dana de tinu haladas na onu gat su'a tinu dohak ni gwat nigula. Agwegwaska njedidawa wet nuni ni gwat nigula dana de tinu haladas na gahi su'a tinu dohak ni gwat nigula. Agwegwaska njedidawa wet nuni ni gwat nigula dana de tinu haladas na gaintosla tinu dohak ni gwat nigula. Agwegwaska njedidawa wet nuni ni gwat nigula dana de tinu haladas na gojo su'a tinu dohak ni gwat nigula. Agwegwaska njedidawa wet nuni ni gwat nigula dana de tinu haladas na gondilio tinu dohak ni gwat nigula. Agwegwaska njedidawa wet nuni ni gwat nigula dana de tinu haladas na ogwile su'a tinu dohak ni gwat nigula. Agwegwaska njedidawa wet nuni ni gwat nigula dana de tinu haladas na ojido angoa tinu dohak ni gwat nigula. Agwegwaska njedidawa wet nuni ni gwat nigula dana de tinu haladas na itisatugo ala diwalas tinu dohak ni gwat nigula. Agwegwaska njedidawa wet nuni ni gwat nigula dana de tinu haladas na geli ni gawalaga tinu dohak ni gwat nigula. Agwegwaska njedidawa wet nuni ni gwat nigula dana de tinu haladas na sugwajia gilkena galakwa tinu dohok ni gwat nigola. Agwagwaska jin the doa wet nuni ni gwat nigola than de tinu haladas ne getu sata santana galakwa, tinu dohok ni gwat nigola. Agwagwaska jin the doa wet nuni ni gwat nigola than de tinu haladas ne ojis dokwa sua, tinu dohok ni gwat nigola. Agwagwaska jin the doa wet nuni ni gwat nigola than de tinu haladas ne gala ni gwedige, tinu dohok ni gwat nigola. Agwagwaska jin the doa wet nuni ni gwat nigola than dachi dinu haladas ne singwai diza, tinu dohok ni gwat nigola. Ono wa galiwa hodungo no wani dizlada dogat tena zike nigoha nisigi aizoda sundala izawasa, tinu dohok ni gwat nigola.
So that is, make sure I'm not muted again. So that is called The Words Before All Else. And eventually I want to be able to say that and recite that myself. I am not that fluent yet to be able to speak that. And here's the other, the reason behind that is that we have had to deal with a long number of years and generations of having our language um, become criminalized, which means that we couldn't actually speak our own language without it, the possibility of being charged or being taken to detention if we were young. So this was not something that we were just permitted to do. And so what happens is some of our elders, like I was raised by my grandmother in reality, and so she spoke it fluently, but she didn't teach it to me because she didn't want me to go out and start speaking. Because as many of us know, when we tell children, you know, I'm going to give you something, but you can't show anybody it. I'm going to teach you something, but you can't teach anyone else it. When that happens, what is the first thing the children do? Is they run out and do exactly the opposite. And so the not teaching the language to our future generations was a way of our elders or our past generations to try to protect us from ourselves. And I understand that mentality. The unfortunate part is that that has created a scenario where we've lost so much. And it's really nice to see that the youth are reclaiming our language and reclaiming our culture and our teachings, and they're bringing everything back. Um, our Two Spirit people are being welcomed back into the circle again, as they should. And so we are finding artists, musicians, who are now singing popular songs in their original languages, so whether it be Inuktitut or Ojibwe or Haudenosaunee languages, Navajo, all of these various languages that our people are starting to sing songs in. There'll be songs that you recognize because you know the flow of the song, but the language that is being done in, you may not know the language, but to hear those songs done in our original languages is so um, it's no pun intended, but it's music to my ears, um, and I love to see that. So um, what I'm gonna do is because I have to, I just got home a couple of hours ago from a 10-hour shift. I'm gonna have to get some sleep. I'm going to look for someone for us to raid. I'm going to ask if you could is copy one of our raid calls and stick with us till we go over and show someone some love. I appreciate everyone being here, and Candace Yanko for the sub, as well as the resub that came from for Deep. Thank you so much. So I'm going to play now for anyone who doesn't know what the Peaceful Warrior is. Whoops. I will put a little blurb here just to kind of give you a little description of what it is. And I'm going to see whose version we want to listen to today. Let's go here, Peaceful Warrior. And hi, Sandra. Welcome in. Go for being here. If you missed anything, again, I'll post the VOD up probably about five minutes after after we raid, just so that anybody who wants to see anything that they missed, they can always check it out. But if you have to run, I get that. Let me go to. Here's one I haven't played for a while. So let me get my mug up the screen. I'm going to play a rendition of the Peaceful Warrior that was kind of collaboration with with Charlie from Plus 6 Productions. But we recorded it, and our friend Bagel Rabbit actually played along with the violin. So this was her rendition as she played along with it.
Yeah, I don't know of
My name's Geller Hyundai.
Hi, Geller.
My name is Geller Hyundai. My name's Geller Hyundai, and I'm a war for peace.
Okay.
All senseless attacks I see must cease. So what am I doing here? What do I really want to say? Is that this world has got to change its way. See, I'm going to fight for the red, white, yellow, and black. I'm going to fight for the ones who can't fight back. And I'm talking about all the preachers, from the water to the skies. I'm talking about all the issues, from the truth to the lies. And I'm going to make my stand with a paper and a pen. You want to argue that? Go back to bed again. Cause you're never going to win against what I stand for. So sit down, shut up, and listen as I give you my grand tour. See, I'm going to target the corruption in the government. I'm going to target the poison in our environment. I'm going to target the injustices to the people. I'm going to hit every target, or I won't keep still. See, I'm going to battle the battle of the battles. I'm going to shake up the cage until it rattles. You're never going to get rid of me. Not till the problems of the world are cut at the knee. Let me kick this out one more time. So crystal clear is the message in my rhyme. I said my name is Geller Hyundai, and I'm a war for peace. All senseless attacks I see must cease. I'm going to fight for the red, white, yellow, and black. I'm going to fight for the ones who can't fight back. So let's keep passing around our information, so we can improve this planet through education. Somebody's got to make the people aware. Someone's got to make everybody care. So pass that message on, if you dare. And whether it's mine or yours, we all got to share. Because there's more power in one man's voice than all the weapons of military choice. Now you put your voice with my voice, we can shout out loud that we belong to the human race, and that we are proud. You don't have to be a master of science to see that we need to create a worldwide alliance in order to approach the corporations that's asking people for their insubordinations. When they bring up what's happening to our waters, and the diseases spread to our slaughters. And what about the government officials who stand behind them? the men who've caused us trauma. Then we have competent hookers in the backseats, with punk-ass teens knifing each other in the streets. We have drug dealers hooking up kids with crack. Why, there's a lot of shit in this world that's just whack. We have people who stand up for the rights and get shot down. Well, you better batten down the hatches. Cause we heading into the next round. Because there's no getting to a war without losses. Lenin, King, Gandhi, they're all on symbolic crosses. Now the speakers of the past are going to inspire the speakers of the future. We're gonna try to heal this world with a metaphorical suture. I said my name's Galahad, and I'm a war for peace. All senseless attacks I see must cease. But I won't be able to move this world all alone. So just remember that this is also your home. So if I put my voice with your voice, and we shout out together, people are gonna hear us. And things are gonna get better. Done it. All my relations. Peace. All my relations. Done it. Peace. All of my relations.
If you watch like The Next Generation and even the movies, Spot is always a different cat. Oh my god!
Dark Nate V just raided with